people pin their hopes and dreams on a number you give them. But my general thesis is we will rally into year end. We will correct at some point. There's a bunch of hedge funds and RAAs and others who are into this who will need to take a bit of profits into year end. I think we'll get a bit of a shakeout, global liquidity slowing down somewhat, and then we should reaccelerate into the end of tax season. So my view is Bitcoin easily gets to 100 this year, and probably is 150 plus by March before it corrects again, and then we finish the year after a larger correction with a very strong rally into the end. So that's how I think it plays out probabilistically.
So when you say a correction, we're at 150, it corrects back to 80?
Yeah, maybe something like that.
Yeah,
maybe less. Maybe a 30% correction, so back down to 100.
So what are people so upset about? And obviously they voted. It's been anti-incumbency throughout the West.
That's right.
And so no surprise that the incumbent was voted out. But what do you think?
Two factors here. One is inflation has slowed down, but the prices have stuck. And that's a hard thing for people to take. We all complain every time we go to a restaurant. You go to the supermarket. You're like, really? Is this the prices I'm paying these days? And people haven't made that back. And the one reason we haven't really made it back is the business cycle. So if we look at the ISM survey, the Institute of Supply Managers survey, which is the guide to the global business cycle, it's actually been below 50, which means it's in sort of contraction for the longest period in history now, I think. So there's something going on with the economy. And I think it's because the Fed took so long to cut rates, because they were fighting the inflation demon of the past. They took too long, and that's kept a bulk of the economy slow. So if you translate that to the ordinary person, if you're running a sandwich shop in Manhattan, or you're running
is that how he feels?
I think he probably would. If he'd say, what was the one thing he didn't need that probably lost him the election? It was the Russian invasion of Ukraine.
Right.
Because that was put the last leg of prices higher.
Right.
I think
oil prices too, right?
Oil prices and food prices because of the disruptions to the supply chain that came from all of that, because of everything from Russian fertilizers through to natural gas. So I think if he would look back and say, what really went wrong in an economy that was doing decently well, it was that. And that led the Fed to keep rates higher than normally would have done. And that's what really cost him a lot of the election.
Right. Okay. So let's talk about Mr. Trump for a second, the President-elect Trump. What could go right and what could go wrong?
So on the right side, I think freeing up of the economy, if he does fulfill the role that's
balance sheet of the United States on the Federal Reserve balance sheet.
First, I think this is a bit of a red herring, because as the world's reserve currency, you don't need to hold reserves in anything else. Right? So that's why the US doesn't hold a basket of euros and yen and other shit. It doesn't need to. It's the world reserve currency. So they don't actually need currency reserves or national reserves. They have a legacy of gold, of which we don't know how much is there. So the way to do this is probably to say, well, any Bitcoin or cryptocurrency that's been seized, we'll put it in the reserve. And that's a way of appeasing the crypto crowd there's no point to have a reserve. Maybe they do. Maybe they think that that's going to help them. But the worst thing it's going to do is just strengthen the dollar even further. And that is not good. A very strong dollar is a wrecking ball for the rest of the world. And without we're seeing so much all happening at the same time. EV, nobody realizes because it becomes politicized. But solar growth, the growth of solar power is more than all of other energy generation added together and doubled. And people don't realize how fast this technology is moving as well, and how much the prices are coming down. So all of these things mean the price of compute is going lower. The price of energy and electricity will go lower over time. Nuclear can be thrown into that. And then you've got AI, which is driving exponential compute, which ends up with infinite human knowledge. All of these things are so disruptive, we can't get our heads around them. And it's quite difficult to invest in a lot of it. A lot of it is in VC hands or in these giant tech companies. So you've got this fastest growing technology in all history. What are you supposed to do? Buy Microsoft in this space? Mm-hmm. We've barely started. I know we all use that phrase, we're so early, but the adoption of this technology as the financial system starts to operate on its rails, so you have instant settlement for equities and bonds and all of that. The transfer payments, even central bank digital currencies are on these rails. Everything folds into these rails. RID, gaming worlds, all of these things. Well, if we're 3% of the journey, it's all to play for. This is the biggest trend we've ever had.
Go to the next question. From a macro perspective, what roadblocks to delivering on campaign promises do you foresee the Trump 2.0 administration encountering in the first year? This is Maureen from Pennsylvania.
Well, this is more one for you to answer because I don't really know. You're more used to the ins and outs of the political system.
I guess what I would say to Maureen and others is that there are systems and formal processes in place.
Growth. Indian households have low debt. Indian government has decent amounts of debt. Households are low leverage. Productivity is going to be from building roads, putting in the infrastructure that's required, and population growth comes from the fact that the average age is 28. This is like golden demographics. So India, over a long-term time horizon, is very good. The only thing that can upset that apple cart for a while would be a very strong dollar, but it's being offset currently by falling oil prices, which is the big input for India. So I've been bullish India for a decade. It's been the best performing market in the world for a long time now. So keep going.
All right, let's fire in another question. What is your outlook for financial markets in the next year? Ajit from Canada. That's for you, my brother.
Up.
Yeah, I agree. I don't see anything stopping this, and lots of earnings, by the way. Lots of friends who's a big Bitcoiner, and I just wrote a book. Saylor wrote the introduction, little book of Bitcoin. I sent you an invite to the book party. One of my friends said to me, I can't figure out what's going to go wrong, which makes me worry something's going to go wrong. Markets climb walls of worry. What they don't climb is walls of exuberance, because the exuberance gets overly priced in, But I do think that there's a sea change happening right now, and there'll be at least for this first 6 months of next year, a big leg up in the markets.
Yeah, I probably agree. If we were to have a big event now, what's interesting to me is I actually don't think we can have recessions because of debasement of currency. A recession is these things are short-term downside risks and then maximum upside risk. It's weird.